On the week of Thanksgiving, I sat in front of a large barrage of photo albums. I finally had free time after a wealth of exams and decided to stroll on through each photo album. One by one, I went through them until I finally found one that started my interest. It was a picture of me so many years ago, but not just any old picture. I was with friends all wearing the same uniform. We were so happy. We were home at St. Louis Cathedral Academy. Suddenly, I felt a rush of nostalgia as long as I held the photo in my hands. The great moments and times that I had at that school started to come back to me. I wanted to relive those times and decided to go and seek out some old friends so that we can put together something to show you why St. Louis Cathedral Academy is so important to us. So, like all things, we have to start at the beginning. What exactly was St. Louis Cathedral? Well, St. Louis Cathedral Academy was founded in 1914 by the Archdiocese of New Orleans. It can still be seen today on 820 Dauphine Street in the heart of the French Quarter, only residing 3 blocks from the monumental St. Louis Cathedral Church. The institution was originally a boarding school where only a small number of students, grades pre-K to 4th grade, actually attended the school. The structures of the school are actually older than the school itself, being built past the 1870s. The school was initially a full convent space for practicing nuns in New Orleans. This living space conflicted with the need for space for students, which resulted in the second building, located adjacent to the schoolyard, becoming an area mainly used for the middle school students, while the elementary students would use the main building. The principal and hierarching nuns would stay in the remaining areas of the school, but the others would stay in the convent spaces located near the famous St. Louis Cathedral in Jackson Square itself. This partnership of the cathedral and the school was a unique factor of the school itself. The school was founded due to a need for schools within the French Quarter area of New Orleans, as its local residents in the early 1900s had no educational avenue for their children within the confines of the quarter. The Archdiocese seeking a feeder school for their other private institutions, such as Ursuline Academy founded in 1727 and Jesuit founded in 1847, responded to these calls by opening the school with the help of the Sisters of Ursuline. The school would become the representative school for the famous Cathedral of New Orleans. There, it would have its school mass, celebrations, and retreats. There was simply no school as unique as the academy, being private and connected to one of the most famous churches in the world. The school would stand the test of time as one of the only schools in the city to have nuns as teachers and principals, even into the 2000s, where many attendees of the school were not Catholic. The school would change some, adding grades 5 through 7 in its later years of existence, and allowing for lay faculty to be allowed within their teaching body. This brought the school into the new age and was seen to go on for generations until 2005, when the tragedy of Hurricane Katrina hit. Many schools were devastated amongst the city and received heavy instances of flooding. The cathedral itself even was hit by the storm, symbolizing the plight of the city. This bombardment of sorrow will continue until late October, when residents of New Orleans would begin to move back into the city. Ironically, there were a lack of schools open within the east bank of the city. Cathedral Academy, similarly to its beginnings, was the first school opened in the greater New Orleans area after Katrina. This was significant and a glimmer of hope for a city that needed it badly. This opening was so big that it attracted people even larger than life, such as Prince Charles of Wales, who donated money to the school, and also polarizing magician David Blaine. The school was hope to many, including myself. These feelings reside in many, such as by Dominique Williams, a graduate of Cathedral Academy.
Well, my family evacuated to Houston after Katrina. My parents debated whether or not they should send me to school, but ultimately they decided not to because there was too much going on at the time. When we came back to New Orleans, there weren't a lot of places open for school because of the destruction of the storm. I was going to St. Leo Elementary before Katrina as a 2nd grader, and my educational path seemed set. But that did not happen, obviously, and I lost a ton of friends, and this made going to a new school really hard. When I first got to Cathedral Academy, I could remember that there was so much going on already. Not only in my life, but in the city after Katrina. On the first day of class, I remember seeing a barrage of faces from all over, kids wore their uniforms that they had from different schools, since there was no, assigned school uniform at the time. And these kids came from all ethnicities: black, white, Hispanic, Asian. And one thing we all had in common, though, was the expression on our young faces. We were all speechless and shell-shocked about how we were no longer in the same place that we had gotten so used to months before the storm. We lost all of that so quickly and had to adjust to our new surroundings within the heart of our city that had gone through so much. Cathedral Academy was a haven, a drifter spot for kids with so many stories to tell, and it became a home for students from all walks of life.
Within the walls of the school itself, you can see how different this school was in comparison to other schools. Looking outside the windows wasn't like looking at busy highways with street signs and cars, but instead, you would see the architecture and withering vines that covered the many establishments of the quarter. The French Quarter was our playground, be it for annual events like the reindeer runs, trick-or-trucks, and Mardi Gras parades down Dauphine Street. Even the everyday events like football during recess or having lunch in the cafeteria were special because of this phenomenon. We were players in history. We could see it every time we came in through those old brick walls of the school. Another late graduate of the school shares this experience in Michael Keys.
I'm not Catholic, and I've been to public schools my whole life. Going to Cathedral Academy was a change in my pace in my life. Having nuns as teachers and principals made me uncomfortable at first, but it grew on me in time. I mean, the school was in the middle of the French Quarter, for goodness sake. That was crazy to me. From the first time I stepped into the school, I could smell history. I could tell that this wasn't some flat, sterilized cookie-cutter school, but it had depth to it. As students were not only learning through our teachers, but also through the walls of the school itself, we learned what New Orleans truthfully was.
I remember my final day at the school on graduation day. I was asked by a parent where I would be attending the 8th grade the following year. I paused initially as I was startled by the question. It made me think back to my many experiences I had at the academy, meeting lifelong friends, learning so much about my city, and being put into situations so unique they are hard to describe. I did not want to leave as it was my home, and I associated so many memories with it to this day. The school closed in 2014 due to a lack of students in regards to the Archdiocese of New Orleans school enrollment criteria. This sparked a huge backlash by alumni and students alike to prevent this from happening. Fundraisers and social media campaigns were started to save this wonderful school, but just like its opening as the first school opened after Katrina, it was the first school closed in a plan by the Archdiocese to push students to other schools, such as St. Stephen's Catholic School. The school lays vacant now, with its future being undisclosed, leaving a shell of what was. I will occasionally see the academy when visiting the quarter. Every time I do, I remember the great memories that made me who I am today, and I shed a tear to know that I was and will always be a part of the great history of St. Louis Cathedral in the heart of New Orleans.